and thanks to Startup Grind for having us here today. And especially thank you to Melissa for joining me. I am so honored to be here with Melissa Alvarado. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Melissa over the last 5 years. She was part of the early core team at Chime that I had the great privilege of investing in early on. And watching not just Chime's meteoric rise, but also Melissa's as the architect behind their growth engine has been really incredible to observe. And all the while she's been building this phenomenal growth engine, she's also become an accomplished triathlete, finishing 5 full Ironmans. Should we call them Iron Women's, Melissa? But because you really set the bar high among all of the accomplished athletes at Chime, and we can talk more about that. But everyone, I think, wants to hear about the magic behind the growth engine you've built. You've quickly become known as one of the best growth marketers in tech, and deservedly so. But what I imagine most people don't know about you is kind of how you got here. And it's a story that I think people should hear. So maybe if you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about your journey, your childhood, and how you ended up working in marketing in fintech way before fintech was the hot sector that it is today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. It's also quite an honor to be here with you. You've been such an important part of the Chime story, so happy to be here with you. I'm originally from Honduras. I am the youngest of 4 siblings. We all started our career in banking, actually. I'm very proud to be an Alvarado. My family has played such an important role in really who I am, both personally as well as professionally. I'm also an athlete. Sports have always played a very important role for me. I became a swimmer when I was 4 years old. I started competing internationally when I was 6. Every year in July, we had a very important competition. It was an international competition. And in order to participate, I had to be among the top 3 Hondurans in an event. And I also had to meet a very specific qualifying time. So at a young age, at the beginning of every year, my coach and I would decide what events I wanted to try to qualify in. We would come up with a training plan, and then we'd figure out how to execute, put a lot of long hours for many months in the pool. And, I recall often getting invitations from friends to go to movies or go to parties, and I'd always think, train first, everything else comes second. And so, sports at a very young age taught me a few things. Taught me how to set goals, really aggressive ones. It instilled in me a desire to dream big, to compete for myself, but also for my country. And it also made me realize that to get big achievements requires hard work. There's no shortcuts. You just really require hard work. And so, it's a lot of the same formula of the things that I do today. Sports continue to be very important for me. I became a marathoner when I was in my late 20s, and as you said, I became a triathlete in my late 30s. And it's the same formula. You prioritize, you decide what your non-negotiables are, you set goals, and then you put the hard work. So it's certainly something that's played a big role. I also mentioned family. Family is incredibly important to me. And my father in particular, he has been probably the biggest influence in my life, both personally as well as professionally. He actually started our career in banking when he was 15. And he started working at a bank when he was 15 as a janitor. He would work during the day and go to school at night. And he would show up to work incredibly early so that he could finish with his janitorial duties, and then he could go help anywhere so that he could learn. And then eventually he got promoted to a bank teller. He joined the accountant department. Then he joined compliance. And then Citi hired him to overhaul their compliance department in Honduras. Eventually he became the president and general manager of Citi Honduras. He's a person who believes in fairness and doing what is right, in giving back, incredibly patriotic. My love for Honduras also comes largely from him. So that eventually he decided to serve as finance minister of Honduras in 2002. And as a little girl, I always thought I wanted to I would say that I wanted to be a banker. I don't really think I understood what that meant. I don't really even think I really meant it. I left Honduras when I was 18 to go to college at Georgia Tech and study industrial engineering, and yet somehow I found my way back into financial services.
Maybe, Melissa, so first of all, really inspiring to hear about your story and about the example that you had in your dad. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the kind of early roles in fintech and in marketing and kind of how you found yourself there? And then we can talk more about Chime.
Yeah. My path towards Chime really began right after I graduated college. So my first job was at Capital One. Little did I know that Capital One, I think, was really prepping me for the role that I eventually got at Chime. There were two very important lessons for me at Cap One. One, I fell in love with data. I learned about the power of data, and especially in banking. You could see people spending trends. I could realize like when they pay their bills, what life stage they're in. Do they like burgers or tacos? There's all these questions that you could just answer when you have access to people's banking data. And I really, really fell in love with this concept, focus on testing and performance. But second, and probably more important, I was a business analyst with Capital One doing Hispanic marketing. Hispanics were less risky, so they were less likely to charge off, but they were also more likely to pay on time. They were less likely to exceed their limits, which are great things. But when you pay on time and you don't exceed your limits, you don't pay fees. And so they were a less profitable segment for us. And so, that realization that basically financial services had business models that require people, that really rely on people living beyond their means, it was really disheartening for me. After I really appreciated what Capital One was trying to do. They had lowered the number of fees that they were willing to charge. And there was a bit of a celebration of, look, we're giving up some fee income, but at the end of the day, implicitly, we made money when people's cars broke down. We made money when people had a medical emergency. And I actually had vowed never to work in banking services again. So how did I end up here? Many years later, I remember meeting our CEO, Chris. And I didn't expect that I would end up working here when I first agreed to meet with him. He shared with me his desire to build a mission-driven company, provide equal access to people in finances regardless of income. But I'd heard that mission before. I'd seen people charge less, but still, have business models where you're still relying on people to live beyond their means. But what really caught my attention was Chris said to me, I want to build a company where the business model is not based on fees. And that was the thing that really caught my attention. As soon as he said that, the data sounded fascinating, the challenge sounded fascinating. But when he said, I want to build a company that doesn't rely on fees, this was the moment when I said, I think we might be onto something. I had no idea how we were going to make money. Fees are very, very profitable, and this is a hard business to make work. But I did think that if we change the business model, ultimately we're all businesses and we're going to optimize for revenue. But I thought if we change the business model, that we would really have a chance to really focus on the customer and really drive change. So we spent a lot of time talking with Chris and Ryan, our CTO and co-founder, because I really wanted to ensure how their commitment to this business model. And that's a reason why I joined.
Yeah, that mission alignment has been so, I know, important to you and to Chris and Ryan from the outset. Maybe before we move on and hear more about the Chime experience, do you have any advice, Melissa, for people when they're trying to make these decisions about joining a startup and they're trying to assess that mission alignment? I mean, what are some of the things? I mean, you had a lot of those hard conversations with Chris and Ryan early on.
There were a couple of things. It was certainly the business model needs to have that alignment. Like I said, we're all businesses and we're going to optimize for that revenue, especially in the early days when we need to figure out how to survive. And so a sound business model that is in support of your mission is incredibly important. But so is culture. I spent a lot of time talking to them about the mission and making sure that we were building the key pieces to make sure that we would support that mission, but also culture was important. I'd worked at a few different startups before, roughly at the same stage, about 10 people when I joined. I had the first startup I ever joined. It had an amazing culture. It was a great mentality of teamness. People were supportive of each other, but also kept each other accountable. They believed in delivering results. We early on defined what our values were. We hired for values, and we were a very high performing team. It didn't scale, and when we stopped hiring for that, when we really stopped living the values, not only morale but also performance declined. I wanted to make sure that wouldn't happen at Chime. Uh, I also had the experience of working at a 10-person startup where the culture and I we were not a good fit. What's interesting is that when it comes to values, you typically nod your heads. I had the conversation with the CEO and we talk about team and integrity and results. But when I showed up to work, I realized that when we said team, we didn't really mean the same thing. I did my worst work at that company, and eventually I got let go. But it was such a valuable experience because when I met Chris and Ryan, I spent so much more time talking about values, making sure that when we said team and integrity and all these things, that we meant the same things. I met the team to make sure that I could see them exhibit that. And also we talked about how do we scale this? Are we committed to it? Because it means you hire different. It means you decide different. So defining the values and the culture and who you want to be and how you execute. There's no perfect culture. There's the right culture for you. And that is just such an important step, that if you're in a startup, any company really, but primarily in a startup, it is not a step anyone should ever skip.
I think that's one of the things that's been so cool to watch about Chime is how you've been able to scale the culture, and you've been, one of the cultural water carriers, so to speak, for the organization from the beginning. You wore a lot of different hats, which we'll talk about more. But maybe before we move beyond culture, are there tactical things that you did early on? I mean, you talked about hiring. Maybe give people a little deeper sense for what that looks like.
So we defined the values. We went through that hard work of saying, like, what do we think the values should really be? We always made sure that they were not just writing on the wall. First, like that we were actually, that all the leadership was exhibiting those behaviors as well. Early on, we started a culture of just having all hands, having values awards for people who were actually exhibiting the values. We've also, as the company has grown, we know that culture is a living, breathing thing. So we look at it again and we say, like, do the values still resonate? Our current set of values, they've been very purposeful. They're all action oriented. They start with verbs like be member obsessed, team up. We made sure that they were phrases that we could see ourselves using in meetings and Slacks and emails. And we're an emoji-driven company, so we have emojis for every single one, and really like those things matter. But above all, it's not something that's just written. We actually use them to make decisions. We use them constantly in meetings, especially when things come head to head.
One of the traditions that I've been subjected to, and the rest of the board has too, is Melissa's frequent planking, group planking on Zoom. How did that come about, Melissa? And maybe tell people a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, about 5 years ago, we had a company objective to get fit for scale. And right around that time, we all decided to take on a planking challenge, the 30-day planking challenge. The 30-day planking challenge eventually, I think, gets you to like a 10-minute plank. We decided we were going to stick to 2 minutes, but we were going to do it every day at 4. It was a tradition that started when there were probably about 20 of us. But as a company continued to grow, especially the first time that we moved into a space where not everyone could see each other, I thought that it was incredibly important for us to keep that tradition, because every day at 4 o'clock, everyone knew that you could get back together and that you would see people, even if you weren't sitting across from them. So it's a tradition that we've kept. And We do it right now during COVID. We every day at 4 p.m. We get together on Zoom and we plank. When we have board meetings, we invite the board to join. And all my meetings start at 4:05 because you cannot interrupt plank time.
So awesome. And it's so cool to see how many people show up for that. I promise we're going to get to talk about the growth engine soon, but just one of the other early hats that I remember you wearing early on, and when I was looking at the company, was in finance. I think I remember you telling me a story about how there was a moment where you realized you didn't have a financial model, and so you stepped in. Can you tell a little bit more about that, and kind of what you did there, and maybe what insight that gave you as you grew the marketing team?
Yeah, so I got to build our first financial model, and it was so one of our early members, Kyle. He's actually still with the company. He's been with us for 8 years. Chris Ryan and I were thinking of how do we set up goals for Kyle, and we first had the idea. Probably his goal should be tied to revenue, and so I said like, okay, great, I got this. I came back, single tab in Excel, and like, here's how we should set the goals. And then Chris said, well, but shouldn't we include cost? And I was less familiar with the cost equation, so I asked for all the inputs. The cost side of our business is way more complex. So probably about a week later and 30 tabs later, I came back with a financial model. And Kyle got goals. And I realized that we didn't have a financial model, so we probably weren't quite sure how we were making money. But that became the first version of our financial model. It was a great experience for me, right? Like I got to really understand both the revenue and cost drivers. And so, we focus on performance marketing. And so we optimize towards a very specific success metrics. And if we don't have the right success metric, we're optimizing towards the wrong thing. And so that experience just really helped me understand how we make money, what the cost drivers were. So as we started thinking about what we're optimizing towards and what customers we wanted, all of those were factors that came into play as we really started to get this growth engine going.
I just find that so interesting, having been on the other side of it, and I remember digging in early with you on the marketing, but also on the financial model. So it's funny to think back on now. And I guess on that, as we both know, Chime wasn't a rocket ship from day one. For a while there, challenger banking was not a hot sector. It's kind of hard to imagine now, but I know you and I both have a lot of memories of that time. So maybe just share with people a little bit about what it was like in the early innings, and kind of when did you realize that you guys had hit a real inflection point?
Yeah, the early days were really fun and very interesting. I joined 7 years ago. I was employee number 10. I was hired to lead our growth and analytics teams, and we didn't have a web enrollment funnel or an app in the App Store. So I would capture people's emails, and then I'd send them a link to an app that was not in any store, ask them for their social security to sign up, and then ask them to give me money. All the spend was in my credit card. I can't even afford half an hour of spend anymore. And analytics lived in my machine. So it was very scrappy days, and clearly we had a lot that we still needed to figure out. From the very beginning, we always knew that we wanted to help people who were not being well served by big banks. But when we first got started, we thought that asking people to move away from their banks was too big of an ask. And so initially, we were a debit card that offered people rewards. We cash back at everyday stores. And our strategy was, we're going to delight you with this experience, we're going to gain your trust, and then eventually we're going to ask you to really start moving more of your spend to Chime. What we realized, we actually started to see people who were setting up their payroll direct deposit with Chime. That is, to us, a signal that people are deciding, now I want to use Chime for my as my primary. And what we saw was these people were spending more and they were retaining longer. And as we started to talk to them, they were also way happier. We asked them why, and the concept of just no unnecessary fees, no overdraft fees, maintenance fees was a really valuable value proposition for them. The simplicity of the product and just the control that they felt that they got from the mobile experience was enough for them to want to switch. We also asked people who didn't switch why they didn't, and they said, because you never told me. And so big surprise there. People do what you tell them to do. And so we started to focus our approach. And so we tackled it head on. Here's a different solution for you. We started to ask people to set up their payroll direct deposits to Chime to make that switch. We already knew that those people would spend more, retain longer, that we could actually come up with a profitable model this way. When we knew that we had something going on was when we started to see that people were actually doing it. They were actually making that switch. And that's when we met you. We hadn't been able to do it at scale yet. Like the math obviously worked, but we hadn't done it at scale. And it was our job to convince you that we could do that at scale. And thankfully, you believed us because that's why we're here.
Well, you're an easy team to believe in. So, but honored to be even a small part of the Chime story. I think that it's probably the right time to start talking a little more tactically about some of the strategies that you've employed. I don't think, I know I'm biased, but I don't think I'm inaccurate in saying that you built one of the world's greatest growth engines. And the amazing thing about that, Melissa, is you've done it, while really maintaining that kind of member obsessed orientation and making sure that you're doing right by your members throughout. So I'm sure people are eager to hear. Why don't you share with us a little bit about the magic behind that growth engine and some of the sort of tactics and strategies that you employed early on, and then also as you've scaled, that would be useful to others.
So it can never be forgotten that we were just so member focused and really mission driven, right? Like at the center of everything that we've done, we've always just tried to understand our members, and that the way that we market ourselves, the way we talk, comes from understanding them. In the early days, our first call center was one of our employees' cell phones. And Chris and Ryan sometimes would answer calls so that our employee could get a weekend. So got to see what our members were experiencing. In the early days, I would reply every single Facebook message that was left in our ads. And so we've always been very obsessed with our members to try to understand their story and bring that into the tactics. Another thing that I think was very important for us is that we didn't have a lot of money. And it is such a good place to start, because when you don't have a lot of money and you're in survival mode, you really need to figure out how to be efficient. And I think the fact that we didn't have a lot of money and that not a lot of people believed in us meant that we had to push the boundaries of efficiency. And I recall a conversation with Chris and Ryan. We were about to go raise a Series A, and it's like, our cost per enrollment has to be half of what it is now, and you have 2 weeks to do it. And when you have to survive, you just figure out how to do it. And so that mentality of let's be focused, let's set aggressive goals and figure out how to get there was important as well. Defining that success metric, as we talked about, was important as well. Like how, at the end, how is it that we're going to make money, and ensuring that the way that we make money and find profitable customers is aligned both from the business as well as the mission. That step can't be skipped. When we first got started, Facebook was the channel that we launched with. We had a lot of testing to do. We had to figure out what was going to be the right audience, what were going to be the right marketing messages, what was going to be the right creative. And the self-serve nature of the platform, the ability to really test different audiences and creative quickly, and just to access those large audiences, meant that Facebook was the first channel that we really doubled down on and gained most of our learnings. We then started to focus on search. Search being an intent channel, it was important for us to understand the audiences and the messages and the calls to action that would work best for us. So that we could actually run efficient search campaigns. We actually tried to do that before and had terrible quality. So really understanding, getting those learnings from Facebook first, helped us really launch the right campaigns on search. And because of the intent, it was really efficient. So Facebook had a lot of scale, and Google had a lot of efficiency for us. And then we put our members to work. We built a great product. Our customers loved us. We had a really high NPS, and our customers were eager to share with their friends as well. I never thought that was possible. I didn't think that people would tell people to bank, like, here, this is who I bank, set up direct deposit. But because our members loved what we were doing, they were willing to ask their friends to do this. So we really put them to work. We set a great referral program for them. It is our highest quality channel, our most defensible channel. And those were the three first big bets that we placed. We obviously continue to grow them. We're now also doing offline TV. We've expanded into many of the other Google properties as well. But those were the key things of how we got started.
That's just one quick follow-up on that, because I just thought that this part was so interesting. But in terms of figuring out how you build a really productive referral program and incent the right behavior, I think you guys did some really interesting things. Any advice for people on that dimension?
Yes. So incentivizing the right behavior is one of the most important things. We actually, before we realized that it was all about capturing that direct deposit, we tested a lot with referral programs. We weren't really incentivizing the right behavior, and a referral channel in the early days was our worst quality. It had the lowest LTV because we're not incentivizing that right behavior. That coupled with the fact that we still didn't have a great product. People didn't love the product yet. And so I think that first, you have to have a great product that people love and want to talk about. And especially if you're incentivizing, making sure that you are incentivizing the most important thing. Referral programs can be easy to game otherwise. So that action that you're incentivizing is key as well.
Yeah, no, and I've seen you guys do that so effectively. So let's turn to brand for a second. You're not a brand marketer by training, but you've built an exceptional brand, and you did that without a lot of brand amplification and investment in brand, at least not explicitly, not in the traditional sense. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that. When did you realize that you'd actually built a really powerful brand, and how did you do that without kind of significant investment in brand amplification?
Yeah. So, a brand is a promise that we make to our members, right? And the promise that we have made to ours is that we're going to help them achieve financial peace of mind. In October 2019, we had a service disruption, and service disruptions are never okay. But when it comes to people's money, it is very sensitive, right? Like, people use our product to buy groceries, to buy gas, and they expect the product to be available. And if we're not, we're breaking that promise. So, it was a very important in our company's history, a moment in our company's history, but it was also a real testament to what we had built. First, our employees. The reason why we've been able to deliver on that promise is because our employees are so member obsessed. That's our number one value, to be member obsessed. During this time, we saw employees across the board say, how can I help? Where do you need me, and when? A lot of people were getting trained on how to answer customer support questions. We were obviously getting a lot of them. And so during as well as afterwards, regardless of role, everyone was willing to jump in and help. And so, it's easy to be true to your mission and to live your values when things are going well. But when things are not, and you see everybody step up and say, yes, our members first, that was a truly special thing to see. But was even more special, probably, if it can be than this, was actually seeing the member response. So we sent an email out to our members, and we apologized, and we asked them to reply with their stories. This is an incredibly risky thing and scary thing to do. I remember sitting with the team, hitting send on that email. It was a Sunday night, and we're like, okay, let's see how many replies we get, and let's see what people say. I think we got over 80,000 responses. Um, we were expecting we were expecting a lot of not so nice emails, but I'd say I think about 80% of those responses were people saying, "This was inconvenient. We don't ever really want this to happen again. But I don't want to leave Chime because you guys have made such a difference in my financial life. You've helped me in so many ways. When you pay us early, when you give us free overdraft." And so our members were willing to accept our apology because we had consistently been delivering on that promise for so many years, that they knew that when we apologized, we really meant it. And that was a moment when I knew like we had actually really built a very special brand. And you know how we did it is like, you know, the theme across the board. It is because we put our members and our mission first. You know, everything from the financial model that we built, the way that we do customer research, the product features that we build, the way that we talk to our customers, like everything that we do is with that mission in mind of like how can we truly help them throughout their financial lives.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I remember early on, when we first invested in Chime, that you know I for a long time felt that you know the millennials and the broader population was pretty scarred by the last financial recession, and you know I think they blamed a lot of like legacy financial providers, and so I think that you all came into the market at a time where the population was looking for real transparency and candor, and you know not obscuring fees and making money in ways that felt you know subversive, and I mean it seemed so simple, but I think that authenticity and that transparency and that clarity with your members, to me really made such a difference. And I remember being on the other side of it, you know, when that outage happened, and just observing the way that your team came together. I mean, it was like, you know, you never want that kind of thing to happen, but the sort of the beauty of the team connectivity that came out of that, and then seeing those responses, it was a pretty poignant moment for I think all of us around the table. So.
Absolutely, and how supportive you guys were as a board as well. It was clear, like our mission and our stance and how we want to behave. It just all came together very clearly that not only when things are going well, but even in the hard times, like we really mean what we're really committed to what we're building here.
Yeah, and it's in those tough moments that the truth of that comes out, and I think that's what shined through for those of us that were watching you and your awesome team kind of come together around this. So I guess maybe I would turn to, you know, more recently you've been meaningfully investing in brand through partnerships and you know other means, and a couple of them that have really stood out to me and I think are fun, and others probably have been witness to this, is you know your jersey sponsor for the Mavs. You have a really interesting partnership with 21 Savage. Maybe talk to us about that, how you thought about sort of scaling that brand presence, and especially in these partnerships, how did you pick who were the right people and organizations to associate it with, and why?
Yeah. So you know, at the start of 2020, we knew that it was a moment for us to start investing in brand amplification as well, right? For a few different reasons. When like we want to continue to have that aggressive growth, in order to be able to do that, we really believe that that building that awareness was going to be important. But also, you know, there's a lot of interest in fintech. Building that brand and that awareness can be a key differentiator, especially because telling the why. What makes us special is not what we've built, but why we built it, right? And so telling that story was going to be very important for us. The MAPS partnership was a very interesting one. You know, a year before, I would have said, no way. We're very focused on our cost per enrollments. This is not something that we could possibly start investing in. But as we started looking at how we build that amplification, partnerships became really became pretty important for us. The MAVs, you know, sports and NBA in particular, really resonates with our members. So we thought this could be a natural place for us to start investing in partnerships and figure out the true value. Dallas is also a top 5 market. And all of those things came into play. But I would say what really blew us away was the Mavs, their mission, their values, their commitment to the community, to their fans. All of these things were things that really resonated with us as well. And so, as with everything that we do, every partnership that we have has to be authentic, right? And we have to have that great mission alignment, and really felt that the Mavs did. We've been incredibly honored to partner with them. You know, when COVID first happened, Mark Cuban's first response was, "I'm going to pay everyone because even though the games are getting canceled, I need to make sure that everyone who was relying on those paychecks still gets paid." And so they really follow with action and commitment. And those are some of the examples. There's so many of those type of examples where we can really say we're so proud to be partnered with an organization that where we really see that mission alignment, right? I'd say very similar with 21 Savage as well. Music also resonates with our member base. But what makes 21 Savage so special is that he has a real commitment towards financial literacy. And so, you know, we thought that was a great opportunity and a great partnership, not only for amplification, but also to have real impact.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think some of the stuff that you've done, even recently with the Mavs in light of what's been happening in Texas, and it's cool to see, and I think pretty apparent that there's good alignment with the partners you've chosen. So, Melissa, I know we only have a few minutes left, and you know, I get asked this question all the time, but I'm really curious to have you answer it. So, I just would love to hear, you know, as you look forward and you think about all of the many opportunities ahead, you know, what are the most important things that are top of mind for you as you continue to build this generational company?
Yeah. So first, we need to continue to stay really close to our members and really understand their financial situations. Things are changing constantly, right? Like we were not expecting a pandemic, and that's really affected people's financial lives, their employment, and so forth. And so we're helping our members today already with spending and saving. We're starting to get into credit building, but really just continue to reinvent how we tackle each of those areas. And that has to come with new approaches to features, new business models. In the business alignment is incredibly important. Is there a different way? Is there a way that you can make money at every single feature, every single stage of people's financial lives, such that the alignment is perfect between customers' financial health? Our customers always ask us that they want us to be part of more of their financial lives. So we're going to continue down that path. And I'm so excited to help them build credit and to help them in all of these other areas. But I'm excited about more people knowing about Chime, not only because I want us to grow and because I want us to help more people, but also because I want people to know that there is a different way. You know, if we think back to when TiVo first launched, you know, people never thought that there was a better way of watching TV. We would watch live shows and buy a VCR and watch things on tape. And we didn't know that there was a better way. And I think that, you know, at the end, we set out to really change the way that banking is done across the board. We really want people to to have a financial peace of mind. And so I'm excited for people to realize that banking doesn't have to be fee-driven and predatory.
I think that is a great point to end on. Thank you, Melissa, for joining me. Thank you to Startup Grind for hosting us, and thank you all for being here and listening to this story of Melissa Alvarado and Chime.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for all your support to Chime.